Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley here for Pinkfresh Studio. Thanks for joining me today. Today I have a few projects to share with you featuring this Bloom stamp and coordinating die set. I'm going to be doing some partial die cutting to create a really cool element for the front of my card. So I'm going to start out with some Neenah Solar White 110 pound heavyweight cardstock. The heavyweight cardstock has just been my preference lately, and I find that when you're creating elements for the front of your card like die cut pieces and things like this, that it really is nice to have that heavier weight cardstock. It just seems to hold up better. So here I'm just kind of planning out my partial die cut element here. I'm just creating a couple of straight lines across this Neenah Solar White cardstock so that I can line up my stamps, and I've left enough room between those two stamps to stamp my greeting as well, which also comes from the Bloom stamp and die set. Now these lines help me line up my stamp, but they also are going to help me with my partial die cutting later. So I've placed this into my mini Misty, and I'm using some Gina K Jet Black Amalgam ink to stamp my images. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to use to color these images yet, so I went ahead and stamped them in this amalgam ink because I can use colored pencils, Copic markers, watercolors, water-based markers, anything like that with this ink, and I'll be good to go. Now I'm going to stamp a couple more of these pieces, and you'll notice that I don't have any lines drawn on these. I'm going to go back and draw those lines later to help me with the partial die cutting. But since I have my stamps arranged and I know that my greeting is going to fit between those two stamped images, I'm going to go ahead and just stamp a couple more. So once I have my images stamped, I'm going to take the coordinating dies and I'm going to hold them in place over the images using some delicate surface painter's tape. You could use some washi tape or other type of low-tack tape. This is just my favorite for holding dies in place. I've never had problems with my paper ripping. And then I'm just going to take that piece, I'm going to put it into my die cut machine. And I'm using a small cutting plate here. You can get these, they go with the Sizzix Sidekick machine. I find a smaller plate is easier for me to use when I'm doing partial die cutting, but you could absolutely use a large plate as well. And what I've done is I've taken the edge of that plate and I've lined it up with my line. So I'm only cutting the part of the image that's above the line. Now I'm going to flip this around and I am going to line up my plate with that lower line to where I'm only cutting what's between those plates. So it's only the area below that pencil line that I've drawn. And when I take off my tape, you're going to see that I have kind of a funky looking thing here because nothing between those lines has been die cut, only the area above and below that pencil line. So to complete this piece, I just need to take this over to my trimmer and I need to line up my blade along that pencil line, and I'm going to cut right up to where that die cut. And then I'm going to pick up my blade and I'm going to skip over that middle area and then cut from that die cut to the edge as well. And you're going to see that I'm left with this piece with kind of a strip that's right in the middle for my sentiment and then my flowers on either side. So on the other side, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just using my blade to cut right up to where the die has cut. Then I'm skipping over the center and cutting the remainder on the other side of that die cut as well. So I'm left with this piece here, and now I can take my eraser and erase the pencil lines that are left over. And I'm left with this one kind of solid piece that will go on the front of my card. Now you can cut these separately. I just think this gives you kind of a cool look. And I'm just going to show you this against a piece of cardstock here so that you can see that one continuous piece that we've created. Now I haven't done any coloring yet. I'm going to do that towards the end, but you could absolutely color this first and then do your die cutting. Right now I'm going to line it up in my Misty with this thank you sentiment, and I'm going to heat emboss that on that strip that's in the center. So I'm just prepping the surface with my powder tool. I'm inking it up with some Versamark ink and I'm stamping it right into the center of that strip, and I'm pressing it down. And then I'm going to add some Brutus Monroe Gilded Embossing Powder. This is a gold embossing powder. And I'm just going to sprinkle that on, tap off the excess, and then I'm going to heat set that with my heat tool until it's all melted. And that gives me just a really beautiful gold sentiment in the middle of these floral images. Now I decided to use my Polychromos colored pencils to color these images today. I love these colored pencils. You can use whatever colored pencils that you have. You could use Copic markers. You could use Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. However you prefer to color these images, you should do it. Today I was not really in the mood to Copic color, so I chose colored pencils instead. And I'm just taking my darkest color of these kind of blushy pinks, and I'm adding it into the shadow areas of this flower. And then I'm blending that out with the lightest shade of pink. Now I did pull out a medium shade of pink, but I didn't end up using it. It had a little too much brown in it. But you'll see me kind of building up the shadows by adding another layer of dark pencil and then blending it out with the light pink. I did also add just a touch of orange to that and blend that out with the lightest pink as well. So I wanted to show you this partial die cutting once again. I am lining that plate up, the edge of the plate, with that pencil line that I created. Now, anything that is between my top cutting plate and my bottom cutting plate is what's going to cut. So in this case, anything that's above this pencil line is going to cut. If you only have large plates, you would do the same thing. You would just take the edge of your large plate and kind of offset it to where the edge lines up with that pencil line, and you have the rest of your image kind of hanging out of that die cutting sandwich. And then you would run it through your die cut machine, and that's going to give you that partial die cut. So once again, I'm taking this over to my trimmer and I'm trimming out the edges up to the point where that die has cut, and you can see the beautiful piece that I'm left with. I love this trimmer because I can see exactly where I'm cutting, and I can just run my blade up to that die cut piece. You kind of feel it with your hand. If you go real slow, you'll kind of feel it give way where the die has already done the cutting, and that kind of will help you with your trimming out of this piece. And you'll notice in these two other pieces that I created that don't have the sentiments, I actually made my strip a little bit wider, and I actually like that look. The first strip that I made was about 3/4 of an inch, so I think these other strips were about an inch different in the middle. The position of the flowers and the stamps didn't change. The cutting position is what changed on those, so I just drew my pencil lines a little further out. Now for the two images that have the pink coloring, I am going to combine those with some pattern paper from the Simple and Sweet 6x6 pattern paper pad. And you saw me with a gray colored pencil there. I just added a little shadow to the left edge of those letters just to kind of make that sentiment pop a little more. And then I took a strip of light gray cardstock and put that along the back to where you could see it on either edge of that strip. I just thought that added a nice little touch. And now I'm going to add a double layer of foam adhesive behind this entire piece. I'm going to remove the backer, and then I'm going to place this in the center of this pattern paper that I die cut with a stitched rectangle die. So I'm just getting that position right there in the center. Because the lines of this kind of radiate out from the center, I thought the center positioning was best for this piece of pattern paper. I'm taking this entire thing and I'm matting it with that same light gray cardstock that I used behind my sentiment strip there. And then I'm just trimming off the excess, and then I'll use some more tape runner adhesive and I'll place this onto a top folding white note card that I created using some Nina Solar White heavyweight cardstock. I'm going to finish off this card with just a few sparkling clear sequins. I'm adhering those in place with some Ranger Multimedia Matte Adhesive. And that finishes off my first card. Now for this second card, I didn't really show the entire process because all of it is pretty much the same. The only difference is I'm putting this in the lower right-hand corner, my focal image, and I did a little banner cut on the left-hand side of this. My sentiment also says thinking of you instead of thank you, but I did add the shading with that gray colored pencil as well. Now for this final card, I am stamping congrats on tying the knot right into that banner area. This is also from the Bloom stamp set. And I stamped that in some black pigment ink, and I'm covering that with some clear embossing powder, and I'm just heat setting that. And I'm going to mount that onto a gray card base, but I really wanted kind of something behind it that was really soft and elegant. So I'm using this floral frame stamp from Pinkfresh Studio. I'm inking it up in some Versamark ink and I'm stamping it onto this light gray card base. Now I thought I was just gonna do that and leave it as it was, but it wasn't quite dark enough. So I added some clear embossing powder and I heat set that. And this gave me a really kind of lacy floral background to kind of radiate out from this image that I colored with my colored pencil. Now for this one, I matted this strip in some gold cardstock and I just trimmed that down. And I'm adding that onto the front using a double layer of foam adhesive as well. So that finishes off my third and final card for today, featuring these beautiful bloom stamps and dies and a partial die cutting technique that gives you a little bit different look with these dies. Now you can absolutely cut these out individually and put a strip in between, but I think this one continuous piece is really a cool look. And I love the way that these combined with those pattern papers as well. Now in the description at YouTube, you will find links to the featured products used in these projects, but join me over at the coordinating blog post. Over there, you'll find more still shots and more information, so I hope you'll check that out. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the Pinkfresh Studio YouTube channel so you won't miss any of our card making and paper crafting video tutorials here. I'm so glad you stopped by to hang out with me here today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.